Welcome back, friends, to part 3 of my unfair Into the Breach Riftwalkers guide playthrough Extravagans Mataz. So I am now considering my third island here, and I've got two well-equipped mechs. Cannon mech with a fully upgraded AP cannon, and the combat mech with a almost fully upgraded Titan Fist and Titanite Blade. Only 2 pilots. I had 3 pilots this run that had Popular Hero. So I pick R.S.T because the Scion for this island is the HP increasing Scion, and I figured I was doing quite a bit of damage with my weapons, so I could muscle through the effects of that Scion. And also, Detritus has spiders and tumblebugs, 2 of the most problematic Vec in the game. And Detritus also is often slightly on the easier side, as far as like mission types and things are concerned. There's lots of acid. So I went with a Detritus last, like in the hopes of making it just kind of an easy cleanup for the 4th island. Looks like I go for the take less than 3 grid damage, protect the clinic mission here. I wasn't liking the look of that train mission, certainly. But I've got a pretty annoying Op 4. We've got burrowers, which are always just a massive pain. A blobber and 2 alpha hornets. So it's just real nasty here. And with my deployment, I'm trying to bait the blobber into launching its bomb right in between all my mechs, and I'm successful in doing that. So I don't have to worry about the blobber bomb. But I don't really take the other Vec into consideration, and they arrange themselves in quite a irritating way. We've got 4 threats to the grid here, and only 3 mech actions in which to deal with them. Now, hindsight being 2020, as is the case with all of these videos, I think I could have gotten a few more elegant solves. What I could have done, I think, is take the combat mech and use the Titanite Blade to just simultaneously damage both burrowers. And then I could have moved the Hornets with the artillery mech and the cannon mech, and I would have gotten more damage out of the gate on the burrowers in the hopes of killing them. But I do a decent job at cleaning up. But I'm going to have 6 Vec to deal with here on the second turn, because both the burrowers are still alive, both of the Hornets are in full health, and we get a gastropod spawning. And as the saying goes, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, and now I've got all sorts of problems to deal with. We've got, once again, 4 Vec threatening the grid. Actually 5 if you count the blobber bomb. So 5 threats, 3 actions, and I was not seeing a way to fully defend the grid here. Certainly didn't want to lose the hospital. Burrowers are always a problem. They're immune to forced movement, so it's more difficult to damage them with bump damage, aside from like bumping other things into them. And since they retreat immediately after taking any amount of damage, you can't really focus them down effectively. So they have this irritating tendency to just kind of hang out for multiple turns. And the fact that they have surprisingly far movement speed, and, by burrowing, they essentially teleport and bypass obstacles. And they attack a 3 square area in front of them. So they're just bad news all around. And they're also of the limited spawn variety, such that there can only be a maximum of 2 of them at a time. But that's enough to cause big headaches. And alpha hornets are always just a nightmare. A classic, just awful problem. I get a pretty decent solve, all things considered. Not perfect. I basically just leave the gastropod alone. It's only going to do 1 damage to the grid. And since I already lost my perfect run on the previous island, I'm a little bit more cavalier about taking grid damage. Got a little bit of wiggle room on this mission type. But if you saw a better solve, I'm always interested to hear them. If you want to leave it in the comments. Now we've got another turn with functionally 5 threats to the grid. If I move out of the way of that gastropod, it will still hit the grid, assuming I can get that burrower out of the way. This map seed was surprisingly non-conducive to the AP cannon, which I had just received for my previous islands, one of my previous island rewards. So I was increasingly frustrated early on in this R.S.T. Attempt that the AP cannon, A, wasn't doing as much as I hoped it was able to do, and B, was a waste of 4 power cores for how few times I was able to actually get the full value out of the AP cannon. And I think part of it was that I think I was banking on just doing lots of damage. And I wasn't really thinking of the fact that burrowers are, they can't be moved. So they can only really be affected by the damage portion of the AP cannon. So I was losing some of the value against this particular variety of Vec threats. So I body block the gastropod's attack with the artillery mech and get an otherwise relatively clean solve, but we still got this blobber causing problems. Both of the hornets are still alive. And the digger. So once again, it's a 5-threat turn. Got the bomb, the hornets, the digger, and the gastropod. And I've also not been able to get very much value out of the Titanite blade. This map seed is always a problem. You look at this map seed, you see that nice river in the southwestern corner of the board, and you think that that's going to be very helpful, but in truth, it rarely comes into play. All of the action happens on the eastern half of the board in a kind of claustrophobic corridor. And it's always just kind of a shuffling game of just general irritants when you do this map seed. Some squads and some varieties of weapons can handle it better than others. I'm finally starting to use my brain here, and I can see that the Alpha Hornet, if I move it aside, will damage the digger first, as it goes earlier in the initiative order. So I can get a 2-for-1 with the by moving the Hornet. The question is, do I move the Hornet with the cannon mech or the artillery mech? So I do another 2-for-1, blocking the gastropod's attack with the blobber bomb. So I can finally kill a Hornet, and we've got the grid fully protected. And that's it. a little bit sloppy. We lost a grid power. But it's a passable start to R.S.T. Now I'm looking at the other missions available to me. We've got a lightning storm. With the possibility of leapers spawning, I'm always a little bit wary. It's bad to get webbed in the lightning storm. Then we have block Vex spawning, which I'm always a little bit hesitant to take, depending on the squad. That can be a problematic mission objective to solve. And I decide to take the lightning storm. It's not the worst map seed in the world. It's a little bit problematic with the blobber here. A bomb placed basically anywhere on the player side of the board will be a threat to the grid. So I don't have a good deployment array to bait the blobber bomb. I'm just going to have to deal with wherever it decides to place it. I can try to influence it as best I can. And we have the ever-irritating burrowers, an alpha hornet, and an alpha leaper. It's interesting to note that the later into a run you get, the less common the scions become. I think it's because they're maybe weighted the same way as other rare Vec are when it comes time to spawn them. So the early islands are the ones you're going to actually have to contend with the Scions effects more than the later ones. Especially if you're aggressive about blocking Vex spawns, or if you don't have a lot of lethality, and the starting op 4 survives for a while. Especially relevant when we are talking about burrowers. So I'm trying to visualize in my mind where the blobber bomb is going to go down. I can see that the leaper is going to have an ineffectual first turn. It really doesn't have anywhere it can go. So I really only have to worry about 4 Vec on this first turn. So the lightning spawns, but I'm not in danger of being webbed, which is nice. Then I get a stroke of decent luck. I was kind of hoping this was how it would shake out. And then I'm very lucky where the burrower obligingly moves to a spot where the lightning is going to strike. So what I'm trying to figure out is a way to destroy the blobber bomb, and simply bouncing it into the digger is the solution. Which means I can get my mechs safely out of the way. I can kill a hornet by pushing it into the lightning. And then I decide not to block a spawn, which is interesting. Maybe I was trying to avoid unnecessary mech damage. Abe levels up his final time and gets Finisher, which is okay. I decided not to block that spawn because the lightning is going to kill 2 Vec for us. So we don't want to prompt a, giant rush of fresh spawns. Again, we get very lucky with the lightning. So now it wants to spawn in a maximum of 6 enemies. And even though we could have ignored the leaper, we do have to do some damage to the burrower, but it's going to die anyway, as hitting it with the artillery mech will push the leaper into the water. And then I do a cute little trick here, where I see I can push the gastropod to block a spawn, and then since the other spawn is on a cracked tile, the gastropod's attack will destroy the tile and eliminate the spawn. So I functionally have no new Vec to worry about on this turn, which is cool. But the game will get upset with the lack of enemies on the board, and so for my penultimate turn, it's going to create at least 3 more spawns. So as many of these spawns as I can block this round will be 1 less enemy I have to contend with on the final turn. I finish off that burrower, getting a cheeky diagonal attack with the Titanite blade. I block a spawn and kill the gastropod. And then I just go to grab the pod, just so I don't have to worry about it. And perhaps the artillery mech will draw some enemy attention. And since there's no pilot inside and it's the last turn, I really don't have to be concerned about the artillery mech getting destroyed. We get 2 alpha gastropods and a leaper. And with only 3 enemies and 3 mech actions to take, I'm confident in my ability to fully protect the grid. Only got 2 mech damage on me, which is fine. And we get a clean board wipe here. We were very lucky with the lightning strikes on this mission. Sometimes the lightning does just nothing, or it causes you extreme consternation. Especially irritating when the lightning is going to strike a time pod. And we get our first time pod on R.S.T. It's just a reactor core, but we take those. Contemplating where to invest it. I go for movement on the cannon mech, just because I was having trouble getting the AP cannon, getting full usefulness out of it. I was hoping that would afford me some more positioning flexibility. And now I'm looking at my remaining missions, and I'm not liking a lot of these. I believe I ultimately end up just kind of banking on an easier mission, hoping for another pod drop to spawn. I think I go for the block Vec spawn at the QA division part of the map. Here I am checking what islands I've already finished. So I've got 3 shielded buildings, which is always helpful. And also on that mission, I have the fake buildings that are actually bombs. Those sometimes are a big nothing burger, but they can be handy if fortune is with you. And that particular map seed is usually decent. The fact that the enemy side of the board is mostly empty and has mountains means that slower ground-based units oftentimes will be stuck over there. But I've got burrowers and a hornet to worry about, so I know I'm going to have action on the player side of the board. The real issue becomes, can I handle the enemies and get them under control enough that I can start just spending time sitting on Vec spawns? You don't always have that luxury. And my hope that the second time pod would arrive was correct. I'll be going into my final mission choice as well equipped as I possibly can be. So we have kind of a lucky first turn here. We only have to worry about the southernmost digger. I decided to just blow up the Hornet while the going's good. But blowing up the building just to destroy the blobber bomb, especially while I've got a shield to spare, seemed a little bit extreme. However, if I don't address the diggers, I would also lose the fake building. The shield would go down and then it would be destroyed. Getting a little bit of value finally out of the AP cannon with boosted for opener. I can actually just kill one of the diggers right away. And that just leaves me with the combat mech. Unfortunately, it can't get far enough to block a spawn yet. But the board has been tidied up. We've killed 3 Vec. So we're going to get probably 3 new spawn points. The Soldier Scion spawns. So this turn, I can concentrate more on just getting spawn blocks in. Try to get that mission objective going. I decide to just execute the digger. It is rare, in my experience, to utilize both of the decoy buildings. Oftentimes I use only one, sometimes there's never an opportunity to use them, so they just kind of hang out. So now we're on the penultimate turn. It's my last chance to get my final spawn block in. I love the flexibility of the Titanite blade. That diagonal attack is just chef's kiss. I do a cute little maneuver to block a spawn. The bomb will not explode in smoke. So on our final turn, we're only going to have to deal with the blobber and one last enemy. And the mission has been successfully accomplished. And we're in the clear. We could just end the mission here. And since my pilots have maximum XP, there's really no reason to deal with cleaning up the board other than style points. But why not? Let's kill the Vec. We'll get you next time, Blobber. So now we're looking at the final mission for R.S.T. And I get the Prism Laser from the Time Pod, which is a weird little Prime class weapon that I don't normally mess too much with. It does more damage the more targets it passes through. And I already like the Combat Mech's loadout. I briefly consider equipping it on the artillery mech. Since I've got a spare power core, I could equip it even though it's not the right class. Instead, I decide to invest that core into the combat mech, getting one more use out of the Titanite blade, hoping that with this train mission I can get some real value out of the Titanite blade. And I frankly miscalculate. Train missions are always a problem. I was hoping that I could thread the needle here. Once again, we've got a very irritating op 4. 2 diggers and a blobber. I was hoping that I would see enemies getting in the way of the train, attacking my mechs, attacking the train, and that I could hit, multiple enemies with the Titanite blade. Line them up and knock them away. But that is not how it shook out. Sometimes the Vec are uncooperative, and they have a will of their own. You can see my standard blobber bait formation. And that comes back to cause me problems later on. I probably could have been a little bit more successful on this mission if I had deployed differently. Granted, I would have probably had to have contended with a blobber bomb in a more problematic spot, but as you'll see, we have real problems here. The main problem being how the Vec elect to attack the train, specifically. Because my blobber bomb baiting is successful, but this really constrains the mobility and movement options for the artillery mech and the cannon mech. The Hornet is, blocking that avenue. We've only got one threat to the grid. I think if I was willing to lose the grid pylons, I might have been able to save the train. But even then, I think I was still in bad shape. Yeah, I could have used the combat mech to destroy the blobber bomb, then moved the Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Again, if you see a more elegant solve, feel free to post it in the comments. But I was in a bit of a pickle here. And I may advance time forward a ways, because I do spend a decent amount of time seesawing back and forth in indecision. So, not seeing any better options, I elect for the combat mech to damage the train, but in so doing, prevent the train from being completely destroyed. And then I make a bit of a foolish choice here. I forget that when I damage the train, the combat mech will not be in any danger of getting run over. So positioning the cannon mech to get the combat mech out of harm's way is a waste of a action. And there's nothing in its current position that the cannon mech can do to really help my board state at all. So I elect to do a reset. The artillery mech was the only thing I could see to reasonably save the grid, and I commit again to the train damaging course of action. But I guess the consolation is I kill the blobber, and I won't have to worry about it anymore. But I have lost my perfect island. However, having sold 3 pilots with popular hero this run, I figured I was doing pretty well. I was ahead of schedule on power cores and upgrades. So I figured I could afford to lose my perfect island, and also part of the reason I chose this mission was protect the defense lab would get me one more power core. So here on this turn, we've only got 4 enemies, all 4 of which are threatening the grid. And I see a nice clean solve here. But that's with my perfect 2020 hindsight vision. May take me slightly longer to see that all I have to do is shoot the westernmost burrower. Then, with the artillery mech, then I can use the boosters to bump the artillery mech into the easternmost burrower. And then use the combat mech to kill the Hornet and the Gastropod with the Titanite blade. There I go, I finally see it. We've got a nice clean solve and only 1 turn to go. We've got a pair of Alpha Leapers and that last remaining burrower. And with 3 mech actions, I'm confident that I can save the wreckage of the train. 1 reputation is better than no reputation. But Jessica Kern will be upset with me, as she often is. And now we're on to the boss fight for R.S.T. The Crab Leader. Before committing to the mission, I consider my options. I still have that prism laser. But before I commit to equipping it to the artillery mech and investing a power core, I decide to first observe the map. And looking at it, we've got a pair of nice, long firing corridors. So, I invest my first core into the artillery mech, and equip the prism laser. I figure I might get some actual value out of it. And I do. I predict that the Crab Leader will just attack the grid, the pair of 2 building grid tiles. It's going to attack that pretty much regardless of wherever I place my mechs. So I want to try and bait the blobber bomb, and also see if I can't try and predict where the 2 burrowers and the gastropod might. My standard blobber bait formation. It's worked several times, as you've seen. The crab does exactly what I thought it was going to do. Bait successful. And we have 4 threats to the grid. Now, looking at the board state, I could have done something cute with the artillery mech, where I could have just pushed the Crab Leader 1 tile to the east, and it would have damaged the burrowers, and thus wound up protecting the grid that it sought to destroy. But I believe the solution I come up with, I think, is more elegant. I just kill the gastropod, and then get some AP cannon value, put some serious damage on the Crab Leader's health. And then I have that fun little prism laser. And I can pew-pew and get a nice clean first turn. 1 more damage will kill the Crab Leader. It once again attacks the exact same targets. blobbers have a weird habit of bunching up next to each other. I'm not sure if it's because the AI knows that they cannot be moved, so they aren't at risk of bumping into each other. I'm not sure, but you see it happen quite a bit. So I've got 5 threats to the grid. I can solve 2 of them with the AP cannon, killing the Hornet and doing some bump damage. I can finish off the Crab Leader. Mission accomplished. And Titanite Blade will clean up the rest of the board. So now we've got a Burrower, heavily damaged Blobber, and a fresh Alpha Gastropod to deal with. Only 2 threats to the grid. And I can solve both of them with that fantastic Titanite Blade. I've got myself a little bit of a nice breathing room this turn. And I see a cute little trick I can do. I can block a spawn by positioning the Gastropod, and it will also kill the Blobber. So now I'll have the action advantage on the final turn, which means we can safely get ready to pack up shop here. All I really have to do is kill that Leaper. Since Abe and Serhina are maxed out on XP, there's really no reason to do a full board wipe other than to flex. But why not? Why not just do a clean board wipe? Mission accomplished. And we wrap up R.S.T. Ultimately, pretty painless, even though I don't get a perfect island. I think I only lost 1 grid health. The weapons available to me are interesting. Guided Missile is a very strong brute class weapon, and the Electric Whip can be very powerful with the right setup. But I'm honestly pretty happy with what I currently have equipped. I do consider selling the AP cannon and replacing it with the Guided Missile. I was not super impressed with the AP cannon's performance on this island, but I do remember that my final island will have both spiders and tumblebugs, and the AP cannon is a pretty good answer to both of those. It's very strong against tumblebugs. So I decide to stick with my guns, and I refuse to part with my beloved boosters. They're just way too useful. Even though the Guided Missile is nice, perhaps I will showcase its utility in a future video. But for now, we are going to wrap up Island 3. We're on to Island 4, and approaching the end of our 4-island unfair run with the Riftwalkers. I just stick that last bit of rep into grid defense. Got a couple spare cores. And after some consideration, I believe I just upgrade the health of the combat mech and the cannon mech. Give them a little bit more survivability. And I hope you will join me for the 4th and penultimate video in this series. Have a fantastic day.